Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Long time no see. Alhamdulillah, today is the first day of Ramadan. I'm not fasting today, but inshallah, Taraweeh begins today. Here, my local time, we're about to be praying Taraweeh roughly in the next 5 hours, bidnillah. And the month of Ramadan is known as the month of the Quran. And so, alhamdulillah, inshallah, I plan on finishing the Quran at least once, bidnillah. But there are folks out there, Muslims, reverts, Arabs, non-Arabs, who can't understand or can't properly read the Quran in the original Arabic language. Um, or they might be able to read the Quran in the Arabic language, but they don't understand the fullness or exactly what it is they're reading. And in the month of Ramadan, we really should be prioritizing the Quran, as it was known that scholars of the past and the companions and the people who came after them, they would leave off many. They would leave off their other books. They would leave off their books of fiqh. They would leave off their other studying and focus on the Quran. Um, and so during this month of Ramadan, I really wanted to make a resource for those who were definitely trying to maximize their understanding and interactions and engagements with the Quran, but maybe wouldn't be able to do it in the Arabic language. And so I've gone through a lot of English translations. Not all, of course, it would be impossible to get through all, but some ones that are more popular, some that I really liked. And I'll just give my opinions on a few of them that I really think are really good that you should usually focus on. There are a few that I would like to advise against that you shouldn't really use. But before I get started with that, I wanted to play some words of wisdom from a revert brother I had seen on YouTube a few months ago, actually maybe a few years ago now.
Any translation is better than no translation. A translator who has looked at the Arabic and through many years and hours, through blood, sweat and tears, has produced a version into your language is far superior than you never even attempting to read it.
And what he says is true. So the best translation of the Quran, or a translation, is better than no translation. So if I share my opinions about a certain translation, and you particularly really like it, throw my opinion out the window. It's only my opinion. It's nothing, I don't know, serious about it at all. If you personally are attached to a translation, or you can only find or have access to one translation, use it. If you can get access to some of the ones that I recommend, I think they're really beneficial, and I think they really enhance your understanding of the Quran. And so the first translation, I'm going to wheel it over here, I'd like to start with is Abdullah Yusuf Ali's translation of the Quran. So I have it in two editions here. I have like a much smaller, like more recent publication, but I also have, I believe this is the third edition from 1938. So this is the one with his full notes. It's broken into two volumes, and this is like an old English translation, so all the ye's and thou's and these and stuff. This one removes a lot of the notes, and it is like a more modern English, so it's like kind of a revision to his original translation. Personally, I am not a big fan of the Old English, so I'm going to grab Marmaduke Pickthall's in a second as well. And I'm not a big fan of the these and thous in the Old English. Some people really do, and especially for reverts from a Christian background who really like the King James version of the Bible and whatnot, or just people from that like Western background that believe Scripture should sound like that. Perhaps that this is the way to go. And I think if you're that audience, it's a really good translation. But for me personally, and especially maybe like the younger folks, I would not recommend it. You lose a lot of meaning just because you don't really understand and use these old words. So a lot of meaning is lost. So again, it doesn't help you understand. It might even inhibit. I also am not a huge fan of Abdullah Yusuf Ali's notes in general. I sometimes don't really understand what it is he's saying and what he's adding. A lot of things here are his opinion, and Abdullah Yusuf Ali as an individual just has a lot of controversy kind of surrounding, whether he was an Ahmadi or not, or his beliefs, etc., etc. So if that's something that will put you off as well, I wouldn't recommend the full notes edition. And I also don't really see a purpose to these, like even the Marmaduke Pickthall one, I'll show you like a more modern version. To just redo the translation with like newer English, so you remove the these and thous, and so you kind of update it because there are just better translations to go to at that point. So wouldn't recommend a more modern Abdul Yusuf Ali, and I wouldn't really recommend the old one either. But if you have them, they're really nice if you have that background. So the next one would be the Marmaduke Pickthall. So I have two Marmaduke Pickthals. This is the older one. So this is an older publication, and as you can see, let me see. Yeah, right. You can see there's like some of these and thous in there as well. And of course, even the book itself looks old. I'm pretty sure I got this at a used bookstore. Um, wouldn't recommend really the translation. I mean, also the formatting on this is not the best, but the translation really is, unless you personally like it, you like that King James Bible English, I personally wouldn't. And then the same just would apply to this like modern updated version. So why would you get this when you can just get, more recent translations that use newer English, that use not newer but like more up-to-date English, and kind of speak in the verbiage that we understand from other books and whatnot. So these two will kind of be I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'll be doing like a tier list type thing. So all of these two will be kind of in like a B tier. I can't really rate the Quran too low in general, but just by virtue of it being the Quran, it's pretty amazing. But these will all be like in the B tier. The next one will be Maulana Wahaddid Wahad Maulana Wahaddin Khan. Yes, I think that's his name. So this is like a little blue booklet. If you've ever walked by like a dawah table, a lot of we give this one out a lot. Not a big fan of it personally. If you are trying to better interact with the Quran, engage with it, extract your own lessons and meanings, it's a really interpretive translation, meaning you're really getting what he believes the Quran says into the translation, rather than just the pure Arabic itself. When I was going through it, a lot of the translated verses are like very unique translations that I haven't really seen amongst other ones. There is definitely an angle towards like peace and simplifying a lot of matters. Doesn't like using a lot of the time like disbeliever. Kafir is not related as disbeliever. It's like you have many different translations for that one word in Arabic, depending on whether he wants to soften it or whatnot. I personally, again, I don't think that's a great approach to translation. I don't think this is that good for that reason. Again, if this is the only one you have, because these are given out a lot and are really accessible, it's still fine. It'll still give you a really nice understanding of the Quran. But if you're trying to get in like a deeper meaning, maybe to have like personal applications, I would not recommend. And then, of course, that would be in the B tier as well. And then this one is another one. So it's called the Quran, Easy Interpretation of the Meaning, Final Revelation. Now, it doesn't have a translator listed. It's just from finalrevelation.net. There's a publisher note with someone, was Abdul Haleem, he's a PhD. So that's like the closest thing we'll get. Oh, sorry, no. Interpretation of Meaning is by Abdul Haleem. So actually is right now here. I didn't notice that. Not a fan at all. Not a fan for a few reasons. One, the formatting is just a wall of text. It doesn't look too good. You have a lot of information in the front that are just strange. I don't know where he's gotten it from. It's not. The beginning is nice. They have like a few maps of where the prophet stuff where the prophets were located and whatnot, and the final sermons in the front. But you have like just some strange details that I just don't really know why they were included. The translation itself, unfortunately, the wall of text, just if it was formatted better, it might be easier to read. Translation is fine. It's not out of this world. It's not bad. It's not good. I actually kind of like it in parts because it matches like the order of the Arabic. Sometimes when they translate things, if you take the verse in Arabic and the translation, they like kind of change the order around to make it sound better. I actually it kind of jars my mind when I read that, because I can kind of think of the Arabic verse in my head, and I read the translations like, oh, the bit at the end is brought to the front. The meaning is the same, but it just feels weird. Unfortunately, though, it's just hard to read because it's just a wall of text. Like when you flip to the next page, it's just walls and walls of text, really just from top to bottom. And for like the Quran in Arabic, right, has beautiful decorate. You know, it's decorated on the side. The text is in the middle. The style looks nice. It's easy on the eyes. Um, and this is just not that at all. Highly would not recommend. So this would be like a B tier. Alrighty, I'm back. So I moved the microphone a little bit lower because it was really like, close to my mouth and it was getting really loud. So that was B tier. If you have them, can't get into translation, use them. If you like the Old English, use them. If they're personal preference for any of them, use them. They're all great. Now the next would be A tier. So these ones are just good, flat out translations. They're not anything special. I mean, they're pretty good. They're not something that I considered amazing, so I wouldn't think of them as like you're getting a new experience or a very good experience with them. But they will definitely do the job. You will definitely get a lot of time to reflect with these translations. You will get a lot of you know good immersion to the original Arabic. So first one will be the Saheeh International translation. So I have it in a smaller pocket edition and then like a bigger one. Um, Funny enough, I'm pretty sure this translation was translated by three revert women. Probably have to double check that for you, but this translation is really good. So I really do like the Sahih International translation. The notes in there are brief. They usually, what's it called? Provide a little bit of interpretation if the verse is like really ambiguous. Perhaps even they themselves they knew as they were translating it. It's like, oh, maybe we should add this note, compensate for the translation. Formatting is fine. Definitely, has a little bit of that wall of text vibe too, but it's not like the worst in the world. Um, I can tolerate it, especially actually probably more with the pocket edition than with this one. With these, like, it's fine. I accept that it's just gonna look like this. Um, Translation is good, not too crazy, but pretty good. I like a few verses. I just prefer this translation over any other one. It's not a crazy experience, but it's a good translation. Very much like it. The next one will be the Oxford Abdullah Haleem. Abdullah Haleem. I didn't say that wrong. Translation of the Quran. This was probably like the second translation I ever read. Really liked it. The Arabic is, or sorry, not the Arabic. Ya Allah. English is very academic. It's very clear. It's very, not really ambiguous to what the verse means. The notes, very limited notes on this one. I'm pretty sure outside of a very brief surah summary, and then a little bit on the front is actually more about like the introduction is like more about his translation methodology, a few context stuff and structures of of the Arabs, and a little bit about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But not too much. You get a little bit because it is kind of a academic translation, so you have some, you know, comments about intertextuality, comments about preservation, and all this stuff. But all in all, a really good translation. And actually, one of the things about this I like is that the notes provide you with justification for a lot of the translations that you might read and you might think is like strange. Like a verse that I read was then the camel going through the eye of the needle, right? Which is like a reference from, or it's not reference, but you can find it also in Christian traditions. But here it's translated as, from a thick rope going through the eye of a needle, which apparently has strong bases in the Arabic, and then also it mentions which scholars held this view. So any translation that you read it, and it's like, wow, I didn't think it was translated like this. I thought I meant this. Usually, if it's very far off or it's kind of unique rather than what we traditionally expect or what you've probably heard, there'll be a footnote saying this scholar held this view or this is where I've gotten this understanding from, which I liked. So the next one is English translation of the Quran, the ultimate guide of success, which is the Why Islam translation of the Quran, translated by Sheikh Abdul Rahman Khan. I really like this one for Ramadan reading. I haven't put it in A tier just because a few things about it I dislike, but I would actually recommend this if you just want a Quran to, you know, read during Ramadan to get lessons out of, to maybe come away with impacts and changes in your life, so that you leave Ramadan better than when you entered it. The summaries at the start, you have a short summary about what the surah entails, but then you also have things like lessons to look for, and like kind of summarized focuses. Let me go to just a random surah. Okay, here we go. So you have Surah Yusuf, right? So Meccan Surah, the background, the chapter was revealed during the last stage of Prophet's life in Mecca. It's a context. Now you have primary themes. So this is what I like, right? So it keeps when it puts it in the beginning, so that when you read the surah, you have these themes in your mind to look for. So you really then it's helping you kind of understand the surah and helping you get some takeaways. So for primary themes, it says proof of Prophet Muhammad's prophet through divine revelation, a warning to the Quraysh about the inevitable victory of the Prophet, the importance of remaining within the limits prescribed by divine law, consolation and comfort from Allah to those who trust in Him, the power of a high and pure character exemplified by Prophet Yusuf. So now, and then of course there's another bit. The chapter uses the story of Prophet Yusuf to highlight the consequences of the Quraysh's actions, the fulfillment of Allah's will, and the ultimate victory of truth and righteousness. So now, let's say you have a situation where, in the workplace, I have to deal with this, and me being truthful and me being Muslim is actually harming me, because I see people around me, lying and deceiving. Someone has lied about me, and I really am angry that they did that. You have these themes already presented to you. Now you read the surah, and what's happening to Yusuf, you can easily put your mind to bring back your life situations and apply it to the surah. Like, oh, Yusuf, this happened to him. This is how he understood it. I really like that. I think especially for people who, if you can't really understand the Quran in Arabic, and this might be the first Ramadan where you have that drive and that energy to really, like, I'm going to read the Quran maybe more than one time, maybe like once in the first half of the Ramadan, the second half you read it again. If you do, I highly recommend this being at least one of the translations you look into. And the last one, last but not least, I mean, it's an A tier, but it's still the highest in that list, which is the Clear Quran by Mustafa Khattab and the Furqan Foundation. I really like it. I really like the formatting inside, kind of Bible-esque, with all of the little sections broken down really in terms of meaning. So this is what this section is talking about. Then you have the verses. Um, Lots of footnotes about really expanding on the meaning of the translation. So if the translation really just gets a aspect of the verse, footnote usually adds like a little bit more detail. Not that strict with the Arabic. Definitely, even labels of the thematic translation is trying to get the meaning out there, not necessarily the exact word for it. Arabic, you like it, probably enough, heard a lot about it, enough praise said. So this concludes A tier. So now let's move on to the S tier Quran translations. These are the ones which I personally really liked. Um, Especially the two translations I'm about to show you right now. When doing this project, these were the kind of ones that I stumbled upon. I wanted to read them. And when I did, I didn't even discover this. I didn't even know this type of translation existed, right? So this is something new for me. Of course, it might not be new for someone watching, but for me it was. So these two translations, the Quran, a verse translation, and the Quran, a new translation by Tarif Khalidi, these two, through not only the translation, but the formatting, try to capture not only the meaning of the Quran, but its recitation as well. So, sometimes, especially if you follow the commas and the line breaks and the spaces, they try to get at the same feel of, the stops in the Quran and the muds, and, maybe even sometimes it feels like, when I'm reading the translations, like, oh, I'm reading the Arabic, I would take like a breath here because I read this whole thing in one shot, and they have a line break right there. And I really feel like, wow, this is someone who really understands the Quran in the meaning, but also just, the recited experience, right? So like when you're seeing they're reciting the Quran, that's part of the experience. The Quran, as in the name means, both a recite a book, or a Quran is something to read, or a recitation, something that's recited. And so how a lot of that is, of course, immediately missed out by a lot of these previous translations, but you keep that here. And so I really like these translations. The translations themselves, the only downside I think is in a verse translation, there are a few verses and a few places where the word used is so niche and so high level that it kind of breaks your immersion, because you just have to stop and Google it, or you just look at from the surrounding context, which I think is a little bit of a downside. But I think it is an amazing translation. If you are going to, really be pursuing an English translation of the Quran for this Ramadan, I would highly recommend one of these two. You don't have a lot of notes, but with these, I think it's actually a good thing. You really get just like the book in front of you, just like the Mus'haf. Mus'haf really doesn't have much footnotes, doesn't have much explanations, and I think they've added enough value from the formatting and the quality of the translation to kind of justify that. A few footnotes are of course sprinkled in for meaning, and of course the surah summaries are also the summaries at the start of the surahs are still there. I would recommend these two for this upcoming Ramadan. Um, if that's not something you are interested in, but you just want like a very clear, very eloquent, very simple, but also very in-depth translation, I would recommend nothing more than the Quran, a translation for the 21st century by Adil Salahi. So Adil Salahi, the author, I've read a lot of his stuff. He has a book on Sirah, Muhammad, Man and Prophet. He also has another book, The Leadership of Muhammad, The Judgments of Muhammad. But I've loaned it to somebody else. The other, yeah, so this is the translation. The English here is like, you had this from an A tier. This is good. Translation is academic, clear. The translation is clear and eloquent, and you know it really can. I don't even know how he does it. Really, take a verse and through the way he conveys what's happening, really just suck you in and really keep you engaged and really keep you immersed in what's happening in the story, especially the prophet story. So when you get to like Surah Maryam, Surah Anbiya, Surah A'raf, in these places, these prophet stories are really engaging and made really well with this translation. So I would really recommend this, especially if maybe you're considering that it might be hard to finish the Quran, maybe it would be a tough thing for you to like sit down and like read through the whole thing, especially while fasting. This reads like this will be something you enjoy. I feel like it'd really be an enjoyable experience. So I highly recommend this. This is in S tier. And the last one I will mention, when I can find it, unfortunately, is the Noble Quran by Muhammad Taqiyuddin al-Hilali and Dr. Muhammad Muhsin Khan. I have a pocket edition, but normally you might not find this edition. It'd probably be bigger ones. This is like a real study Quran. Like there is a book out there called the Study Quran, but I highly do not recommend it. If you want a small translation that has a lot of hadiths, a lot of context, a lot of it takes from Sahih Bukhari, it takes from Ibn Kathir, it takes from all these tafsirs, and it takes a lot of hadith, and it kind of puts it all in there. That means there's a lot of footnotes added, which you will have to read, but there's a lot of value here as well. So like there when I was reading through this, there are things about Islam that I learned later in life that are present in this translation. Had I just read this, I would have learned a lot more about, especially the context of Rasulullah SAW and the time of the Quran, when the Quran was being revealed, the seerah, some things about pre-Islam, a lot of the reasons for the revelation, and find many ayat, and that in and of itself adds a lot of meaning. When you read an ayah and you know why it was sent down, it adds a lot to your experience. So this is another one. If your intention is really to study and leave Ramadan knowing more about Islam, knowing more about your religion, then when you enter, I would highly recommend this. I'd highly recommend the Adil Salahi if you want, like, if you're struggling to finish it and you want that type of experience, I'd recommend that as well. And of course, the first two for maybe like a unique, you merge kind of the recited Quran experience with the English translation. So that is that for me. Inshallah, may Allah SWT put barakah in all of our Ramadans. May Allah SWT allow us to conclude Ramadan healthy, having fasted all of the days. May Allah SWT answer all of our du'as during Laylatul Qadr and keep us steadfast and energized to worship Him, to go to Taraweeh throughout the whole of Ramadan, not just maybe the beginning and the last 10 nights. قولي قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.